Hello again. So let me show you about this thing I've been mentioning, the demographic transition model. In a previous video we did together, I showed a version of the demographic transition model, and it had population pyramids at the bottom, right? Because you can use a population pyramid to look at how quickly over time, in periods of 5 years, how quickly over time population is staying steady growth. So the birth rate and the death rate are pretty steady, or is the birth rate really high birth rate, but also a really high death rate? So population narrows and gets like really skinny. So these different shapes of population pyramids can tell you a lot about population, but we can use this thing called the demographic transition model to understand how and why industrialization and urbanization and agriculture as a subsistence strategy have really contributed to increased population, improved health conditions, while on the same time, it kind of contributes to some of the social problems that we cite in the world today. Social inequality is a big problem, and poverty in general is a big problem, and anyway, so we will try to talk about all those things over the course of the semester, but let me focus now just on how to interpret this demographic transition model. Okay, so in this more detailed one that I'm showing you now, you'll see this first column that shows you that across the top there are stages. So this chart is divided into different stages of human history, so to speak. You see birth rates and death rates over here in this column, 1,000 people per year. So if it's at 40, we're talking about 40,000, right? And so it's birth and death rates per 1,000 people per year, okay? So we're going to look at that, and then also over here on, as we go down the column, it gives examples of where you might see a population with these birth and death rate dynamics. It also talks about the natural increase rate that we mentioned as one of the abbreviations. And then also on this bottom part, it includes that epidemiology of what types of health conditions people would experience that would contribute to either the high or the low death rates. And then I've got another little chart back here that I'll show you. Okay, so in stage one that you can see down here, right here, stage one is called the high stationary phase, because you have a total population relatively stationary, even though you have a lot of births and a lot of deaths. It's really, really close together. So the crude birth rate and the crude death rate are relatively equal to each other, and therefore the population stays low and it stays consistent over time. You can see at the end of this stage, population starts to increase, and it's predominantly about subsistence strategies and the way people do work. So I've used this word subsistence strategies a couple of times, and so let me make sure that you know the meaning of this. So a strategy, of course, is a tactical way to attack something and get something done. And to subsist means to survive. In particular, in this case, we're talking about food getting. How do people produce, store, and use food? And in this high stationary time, even though the demographic transition model represents mainly a period, of agriculture, there we go, put that back down, mainly represents a period of agriculture, which essentially agriculture has been part of human history for about the last 5,000, 6,000 years. But of course, humans have been around much longer than that, and foraging, horticulture, not the botany kind of horticulture, but horticulture, which is like a communal type of small scale, no surplus kind of crop production. There's pastoralism, and then you have agriculture. Agriculture takes a lot of labor. Early agriculture, like as represented in stage 1, takes a lot of labor, but surplus food can be produced so that it can support a growing population. And so that's what you see here at the very, very end, the transition point between stage 1 and stage 2 on the demographic transition model. Pardon me, you see this population going up because here the death rate is going down, starts to go down. You see it really separate in stage 2 because food availability, food production and food availability became much more predictable. There was food security because a lot of the reasons why people died at such high rates in stage 1 because of disease, and maybe that disease caused a famine. They had not very much medical knowledge about how to keep people healthy or how to cure some kind of disease or even cure things like infections. Remember germ theory, which you have learned about in history class undoubtedly, was not really a thing until, gosh, when was it? It's like really recent human history before we had that improved kind of medical knowledge that we just needed to wash our hands in order to help prevent spreading infections from one person to the next. So the knowledge about health conditions, medical conditions, how to cure these things, and also the lack of food security, the lack of ability to control a predictable food supply kept the birth rate and the death rate well, the birth rate was high, but the death rate was really high also, so the population was kept relatively stable, but very low. Okay, so as we transition into stage 2, what you do see is advanced agricultural knowledge and increased health and a robust lifestyle because there was food security. And so the birth rate remained relatively high here, very high in fact, because at this time in human history, it's not till the end of stage 2 down here, but at this time in human history, when we say agriculture, it was done with these hands. It was done with elbow grease, like my grandmother would say. It was done with very rudimentary tools. There were not plows necessarily that people even pulled behind a horse. If you can picture that, if you've seen that in a movie or something, sometimes farmers have plows that till up the land that you can have a horse haul through the field for you with your guidance. That cuts a lot of human labor out. But kids were seen as necessary members of a family because they had a job to do. They were the cheapest labor that you could have. And so these two early stages in demographic transition showed really a significant place for children in food production and children in doing the work of not only the household, but also agriculture produces surplus. So if you are producing more than what your immediate family needed on a yearly basis, you could use that to sell, to trade, to improve your lifestyle in other kinds of ways. And so kids had a really different, people in general had a really different look or attitude, that's the word I'm looking for, attitude about children, because they were necessary workers. Large families were very important, not only for that, but also for religious reasons and just cultural reasons in general. So population birth rates, the crude birth rate was very, very high, but you see the death rate go down significantly in stage 2 and continue to do so in stage 3 because of increased medical knowledge, increased food security, and all of those points that we have made. So this is how we are interpreting these different lines on this graph. So when you see that the birth rate remains high, but the death rate falls, the crude birth rate, crude death rate begins to fall, then total population can go up significantly. And that's what you see in society when you get advanced medical knowledge, you get a higher education level among the population, and you have more food security. Now, in between stage 2 and stage 3, since this originally is based on English history, you see a significant increase in population, because the crude death rate is going, so the natural increase rate, which is represented by this, the NIR represented by this red line on the demographic transition chart, increased just very quickly in stage 3 because the Industrial Revolution happened. It meant that farm labor was 50 times easier to do. You needed far fewer humans to do it, and therefore you could produce an even greater surplus than anybody had ever imagined. So this is the time when Thomas Malthus was living. He really did not live to see a time when the Industrial Revolution would really change the arithmetic rate that food had been produced in the past, and it really just exploded. The surplus, the potential for food production just exploded with the Industrial Revolution. In fact, the innovations in manufacturing that were focused on, that people researched, where you had medical innovations, but you also had manufacturing innovations, people focused mainly on agricultural pursuits because that was the predominant economy, and that was the most significant thing in people's lives, food production, in order for, to survive. And so you see the crude death rate fall, but also look how significantly the crude birth rate fell during this phase in demographic transition. And it's predominantly because machines were taking the place of human labor, and no longer did you need all those kids. You didn't need 25 kids in a family in order to work a farm, whether it was yours or somebody else's. Another thing that you see with agriculture is you see land ownership and ownership of property, ownership of goods, ownership of your labor and selling labor. You see this concept of wealth versus poverty, the haves versus have-nots. This kind of social problem also was created and emphasized and highlighted because of agriculture, and specifically the Industrial Revolution, that made land much more valuable because it was profitable to produce as much as you possibly could and then take it as far away from there as possible and sell it for profit. So you see a whole bunch of social problems, or at least what is interpreted as social problems these days, that come about from the Industrial Revolution, and specifically agriculture becoming so much more efficient. There was so much more yield and productivity per unit of land, and that's why that agricultural density that we looked at in a previous video is an indicator of the amount of development in a nation. If you have a very low agricultural density, that means that there's very few farmers to the amount of arable land. Because you don't need so many farmers, you've got machines to do that. So that's an indication of the degree of development in that area. If you have a lot of farmers to the unit of arable land, then that means that it takes a lot of human labor, and there's not a whole lot of mechanization in the food supply yet. So let me stop this video here before I get too long, and I will come back and we'll pick up with stage 3 and also overlap this epidemiologic transition model too. I hope I don't have to say that word too many more times, and I don't know whether, I'm sure YouTube can spell it correctly in the captions. I hope so. See you next time.